Calling to order the Cuyahoga County Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, June the 26th. Clerk, please call the roll.
That's good.
Calling the roll, Mr. Tuma?
Here.
Mr. Gallagher? Mr. Schramm? Ms. Conwell?
Here.
Mr. Jones? Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Ms. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Hauser?
Here.
Ms. Simon? Here. Ms. Baker? Ms. Baker is absent at the moment. Mr. Miller?
Here.
And Council President Brady.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We're going to be going to public comment in just a few minutes, but first the county executive has asked, and we have given him the opportunity to speak to ordinance 2018-0009, the anti-discrimination legislation that we'll be starting to listen to a little later this afternoon. County executive, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks, Mr. President and council members, for giving me the chance to speak and taking me out of order so that I can rush off to my next meeting. Thank you. Recently, we've seen the beginning of a community-wide conversation about how to increase businesses, jobs, and population in Northeast Ohio. The introduction of countywide human rights legislation protecting LGBTQ individuals from discrimination is an important step forward. In fact, it's a crucial step forward. How can we hope to be viewed as a welcoming, open, inviting community if we allow large numbers of people to suffer discrimination? Ohio law already makes it illegal to refuse a person a job or housing based on their race, age, religion, gender, disability. But Ohio law says it's okay to discriminate against people who are LGBTQ. That is wrong. This is not and should not be a partisan issue. In 2009, as Speaker of the Ohio House, I proposed similar legislation for the state of Ohio. House Bill 176 passed the Ohio House narrowly, but with bipartisan support. Sadly, the Senate refused to take up the bill. During the debate on that bill, maybe the biggest concern that I heard from my colleagues was that somehow the bill would hurt Ohio businesses. I can tell you that that concern is long gone. Today, businesses around the state have expressed support for similar anti-discrimination legislation. Most important, the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, the biggest business association in the state, and one that's never been confused with a liberal democratic organization, is supporting similar anti-discrimination legislation. And many businesses operating in Northeast Ohio have also endorsed eliminating discrimination against people who are LGBTQ. These include the Cleveland Clinic, Calfee, Starbucks, BP, Han Lozier, Benish, Progressive, PNC, the Cleveland Metropolitan and Ohio State Bar Associations, Tri-C, United Way, Ernst & Young, Key Bank, New York Life, Metro Health, AEP, Sherwin-Williams, Highland, Bob Evans, University Hospitals, the United Church of Christ, Huntington, Cranes, Summa Health, AT&T, General Electric, Voorhees, Fairmont Santrol, Eaton, Jenny's Ice Cream, Cisco, Thompson Hine, Porter Wright, Squire Patton, Lubrizol, Cleveland Whiskey, the Cleveland Foundation, Great Lakes Brewing, Destination Cleveland, Mitchell's Ice Cream, Ulmer, Case, Bernie Marino Companies, Taft, Westfield Insurance, United Way, and there are many others. We've been building our convention and tourism industry in the county. Many convention planners say that they avoid booking in areas they view as anti-LGBTQ. When it comes to relocating or investing in a city or county, many business leaders are unwilling to make investments in LGBT unfriendly places. And we are in a war for talent, to attract and retain talented people. When we tell people who are LGBT that we don't respect your rights, we not only lose them, but we alienate many other talented individuals as well. A spokesman for the Ohio Chamber stated, "Our members want to be able to attract the best and the brightest from all walks of life. To be able to do that and compete with other states for talent, we need to make people feel welcome here. Part of that is making sure we have adequate protections in place for all employees." Regardless of what businesses believe, I believe this legislation should pass because it's the right thing to do. I know all of you on this council, and I truly believe that all of you also know in your hearts that discrimination is wrong and that this legislation should pass. For anyone who's concerned, our legal department has advised that a person's constitutional rights based upon, for example, religious beliefs still take precedence. The Ohio civil rights exemptions for religious institutions remain. And if a city within the county wishes, it may opt out of the law. I commend State Representative Nikki Antonio for submitting similar legislation once again in the Ohio House. If her bill passes, this legislation would probably be rendered moot. We don't need to duplicate what the state does, but we cannot wait for the state to take action. Our county stands for fairness and equity for everyone. It's time we pass this law to protect the rights of people who are LGBTQ. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, first come, first serve.
Okay, the first speaker is Susan Becker. If you'll please come up to the microphone, and you'll have 3 minutes to address council. Ms. Becker, is the green light on in front of you?
All right, let's start again. Okay. My name is Susan Becker. I'm a professor emerita from Cleveland Marshall College of Law, where I taught a course on sexual orientation, gender, and the law for many years. I also served as an expert witness in the Obergefell equality case, marriage equality case, where I testified about the historic and continued discrimination against LGBT persons in Ohio. But today I'm not speaking to you as an academic, but rather as an attorney who's provided pro bono legal counsel to LGBT plus persons for almost 3 decades in this area. It all started in about October of 1990 when I received a call from a woman who had worked at the same company in Cuyahoga County for many years. She'd received excellent annual reviews and got steady promotions. She absolutely loved her job. But this all came crashing down, however, when a coworker revealed to her boss that my client is a lesbian. Within days of being outed, this model employee started receiving write-ups for a workplace infraction she did not commit, and she received an impossible increase in her workload. The end game was clear. She was going to be fired. I was able to negotiate with her employer and allow her to resign and get all these negative things pulled from her permanent personnel file, but the law provided no other remedy. My client was devastated. So at that time, almost 3 decades ago, the law failed to offer a remedy for the injuries she experienced. Today, it still fails. This pattern repeated for all of my clients who are threatened by their landlords, for clients who are ridiculed, denied service, even physically assaulted in various places of public accommodation. All my clients wanted was to be treated fairly at work, to be secure in their homes, and to be able to go to a play or shop for groceries or get their car fixed without being worried about being harassed or endangered while they're doing this. But case law repeatedly turned a blind eye to the egregious mistreatment my clients endured and today it's still blind. So your efforts to provide equal treatment for all are indeed laudable, and I certainly applaud them myself. But sections of the ordinance as written, however, may undermine your stated goals, and I just have two I'd like to bring to your attention. So the first is there's a provision that allows a complaint to be dismissed at any time for administrative convenience. I've not seen that in other ordinances, and I'm not sure what it means, but clearly an adjudicatory process that could evaporate at any moment is not is of little value to me as a practitioner or my clients. And second, I'm concerned about the limitation of remedies. In most non-discrimination law, there are remedies that include things like financial compensation for the actual victim of the discrimination, as well as their attorney costs and fees. I think these changes are essential because from my client's perspective and from my own, an ordinance that purports to combat discrimination but offers far less protections for LGBT persons than other discrimination law feels itself like another form of injustice. Thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you. Counsel, Ms. Becker, Susan, are you going to be able to be here for a while this afternoon? We have a confirmation hearing on Health and Human Services first, and then we're going to have a presentation on this legislation. Are you able to stay? I would be honored to stay. We appreciate it. We may draw on your expertise at some point in the hearing. Thank you. Okay. All right, next.
Next speaker is Ms. Peggy Zone Fisher.
Pays to show up early. Good afternoon. Thank you for letting me take just a few minutes of your time. My name is Peggy Zone Fisher, and I'm president and CEO of the Diversity Center of Northeast Ohio. We've been around. We started in 1927 as the National Council of Christians and Jews. The Diversity Center's mission has never changed since 1927. We are dedicated to eliminating the polarization effects of bias, bigotry, and racism. And our vision for Northeast Ohio is to create strong and vibrant communities that promote high-quality education for all youth, a spirit of inclusion that champions individual strengths, and a diverse and productive workforce to support economic development for Northeast Ohio. I am here to voice our strong support for the proposed anti-discrimination ordinance that has been proposed. I would like to start by, first of all, thanking County Executive Armin Budish for his longtime commitment to this issue and this important piece of legislation. I would also like to thank Council President Dan Brady and Council members Dale Miller and Michael Hauser for sponsoring this piece of legislation. Members of our LGBTQ community need protections now more than ever by providing an avenue to file complaints that when any discrimination happens through instituting a commission on human rights and providing administrative support, Cuyahoga County is demonstrating its commitment to inclusion and access to justice for all. Any form of hate is not a form of hate to one particular group. It is a form of hate to all of us. Ohio and Cuyahoga County could fall behind many other major cities across the county without these protections, around the country without these protections. Policies like this help attract and retain the best talent, increase business to business and business to consumer relationships, and help grow our economy. While the state continues to try to enact similar legislation, as you've heard, Cuyahoga County can join 30 other Ohio cities to ensure protection to all of its citizens. The Diversity Center of Northeast Ohio is committed to helping create communities where everyone is connected, respected, and valued. And by adding sexual orientation and gender identification to the list of protected classes, this legislation helps to achieve that. I truly, truly urge all members of council to pass this ordinance. And thank you for giving me the time to be here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Peggy.
The next speaker is Jerome Collier.
President Brady, and may it please the commission. My name is Jerome Collier. I'm a professor at Cleveland Marshall College of Law. I do not represent Cleveland State University, however. I'm coming here in a personal capacity. I previously helped the Cuyahoga County in authoring an amicus brief to the United States Supreme Court in the seminal case of Obergefell, and I have worked on previous drafts of this legislation. Thank you for your time. 3 years ago, almost to the day, the United States Supreme Court had announced a new constitutional rights in Obergefell. That is the right to same-sex marriage. 2 years later, a year ago to the day, the United States Supreme Court clarified that this right carries with it the full constellation of rights that comes with other forms of marriage. For example, the Supreme Court struck out the Arkansas Supreme Court decision that two mothers cannot appear on the birth certificate of their child. They said, of course they should. It's clear. A few weeks ago, in the seminal case of Masterpiece Cake Shop, the Supreme Court, all 9 justices, have clarified that neither philosophical nor religious objections allow business owners and other actors in the economy and in a society to deny protected persons, including LGBTQ members, equal access to goods and services. The Supreme Court has also said that no actor in the market may place a sign outside their store or service saying LGBTQ members are not welcome. Yet despite all those decisions and despite all those great statements by the United States Supreme Court, LGBTQ members of the communities cannot exercise their rights in their day-to-day lives. Think about it. A member of the LGBT community in the state of Ohio can come to work a day after his wedding ceremony, show his colleagues pictures from the celebration, from the reception, and be fired just for that. Just for that. Think about it for a moment. It's as if someone who's exercising a Second Amendment right to use a firearm goes to the fire range, comes back to work and said, I scored 100 out of 100 in the fire range, and gets fired because he was just exercising his Second Amendment rights. That doesn't make any sense. This is unfortunately neither new nor surprising. The majority of states in the United States today do not protect LGBTQ members from anti-discrimination. In his book, The Better Angels of Our Heart, Harvard professor Steven Pinker says the following: at least since Leviticus 20:13 prescribed the death penalty for a man lying with mankind as he lieth with a woman, many governments have used their monopoly on violence to imprison, torture, mutilate, and kill homosexuals. May I just finish this quote? A gay person escaped government violence in the form of laws against indecency, sodomy, buggery, unnatural acts, or crimes against nature, was vulnerable to violence from his own fellow citizens in the form of gay bashing, homophobic violence, and anti-gay hate crimes. Today, we're asking to take a very modest step against this trend. Today, we're asked to bring the LGBT members of the community into our fold and have equal rights. I just want to end by saying today is my son's 9th birthday, and he would like to grow in a community where everyone feels accepted and honored and dignified as the other. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ms. Vera Boggs.
Good afternoon, President Brady and council members. My name is Vera Boggs. I'm the Regional Director for the Cleveland office of the Ohio Civil Rights Commission. I come before you today to say without a doubt that the civil rights laws have made us a better nation, a better state, and a better community. Yet, there are some people out there who are not being protected. They are being harmed because they do not have the protection under the civil rights laws. We know that there are harmful discriminatory acts against persons with a different sexual orientation and/or gender identity. Such discriminatory conduct robs a person of their dignity and sense of self-worth without any regards to their knowledge, skills, abilities, or character. Ohio has had a history of a strong public policy against discrimination, and we are committed to ensuring equal opportunity to fairness. The Ohio Civil Rights Commission, we support state legislation such as House Bill 160, which is otherwise known as the Ohio Fairness Act. It makes it a violation for one to discriminate against men and women with a different sexual orientation, identity, or expression in places of employment, public accommodation, housing, and credit. Today's proposed local ordinance will help accomplish the same thing as House Bill 160. And as a partner in this, we are ready to take charges that will be referred to our agency if it falls within our jurisdiction. We have a staff that is willing and able to handle these cases. Currently, we handle about 3,200 cases of discrimination across the state. At any given time, we have 1,200 open cases of discrimination. With that being said, we know that there are discrimination cases out there that we want, and we want people to come forth with charges. We know that there's discrimination occurring out there, and without laws like this, they cannot come forward. So the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, we look forward to helping ensure equal opportunity and anti-harassment for all persons who live, work, play, and conduct business here in Ohio. Thank you.
The next speaker, Mr. Roberto Ochoa.
Buenos dias. My name is Roberto Ochoa, and I live in the Buckeye Shaker Heights neighborhood of Cleveland. I bring to you greetings from the National Office of the United Church of Christ, located here in Cleveland, where we have almost 5,000 congregations nationwide with close to 1 million members. Historically, from Amistad to the movement to end of slavery in the U.S., to supporting the civil rights of all people, including women, folks of color and race, differently able, military status, recently arrived, age, religion, and the lesbian, gay, bi, transgender, queer communities, the United Church of Christ, an open and affirming immigrant welcoming and just peace denomination, supports this proposed ordinance to establish a Commission of Human Rights. I am a new staff member in the United Church of Christ and a recent arrival to Cleveland that I now call home. When I relocated from out of state, I looked for housing, and on one instance, when I wrote down and marked married as my marital status on my rental application, the property management personnel asked me if my wife was moving with me. When I said my husband was Jim, there was this long, quiet pause. It seemed like a long one. Beloved neighbors, it had been a while that I felt so vulnerable and wondered to myself, should I just mark single? Because honestly, it didn't even enter my mind to do so because the question was just asked of me. It was then that I learned and realized that Ohio as a whole does not protect my rights as an LGBTQ person, and from discrimination of housing and employment. As a veteran of the U.S. Air Force, I do want to acknowledge my gratefulness to the Lewis Stokes Cleveland VA medical outreach to the LGBTQ communities. I have a 20-year relationship with my primary care provider in another state, and coming out as a gay person for medical benefits brought a lot of anxiety. But when they were there at Cleveland Pride, it helped me a lot. So for them, I am grateful for their service to all vets. So in the United Church of Christ, many of our congregations are open, explicitly say we're open and affirming to ensure that people know that we welcome all. We want to say that the United Church of Christ endorses the passing of this ordinance. Gracias for your time and considerations. Blessings and peace be upon you.
Thank you.
Ms. Andrea Craig.
Good morning, or good afternoon. My name is Andrea Craig, and I thank you all for your time. I am the aunt of Brandy Bledsoe, who was a 32-year-old transgender woman that was murdered in October of 2016. And as I went through the transformation of his life to her life, I then became aware of the legislative deficits that Ohio and Cuyahoga County have. I worried about where was she going to live. She was in the middle of a lease, so we didn't have to worry about it. When she was murdered in October, we had started looking for new housing, and there were places that were not going to rent to her because she was transgender. It's imperative. This community has enough to battle with, just trying to be a part of an organization and be a part of a community. They're productive, they're successful, they have money, some of them don't, but that doesn't mean that they should be treated unfairly. And right now, the legislative laws are so unclear and ambiguous that you can't understand them. And so knowledge is power. So I do ask that you all make it clearer for us so that we do have a remedy for the treatment that they receive. And I thank you for your courage to fight a uphill battle for my Brandy is gone, so I don't have to worry about where she's going to live. But for all of the Brandys that are down here, they need your help. Thank you.
The next speaker is Ms. Michelle Tamela.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Tamalo. I'm the president and co-founder of Fit Technologies. We're a managed IT services firm with about 70 employees headquartered in downtown Cleveland. I'm also on the board of Engage Cleveland, which is a nonprofit that works to engage and retain young professionals as a way to contribute productively to the region. And I am the board president of Plexus, which is the LGBT and Allied Chamber of Commerce that focuses on connecting resources for business owners and professionals that boost economic equity and workforce inclusion. For roles that we need at Fit Technologies, our mid-sized firm competes for talent with all sorts of organizations, whether they're Fortune 500 companies, like organizations that are represented here today, or the many organizations that the executive read in his opening remarks. For Fit or any of these organizations, our companies benefit in a competitive market when we increase the applicant pool. We know that we're limiting the applicant pool by having laws that discriminate. And as a service business, like many businesses here in the region, our growth is almost solely dependent on recruiting capable talent. What's more, recent national research has shown that the most sought after talent values diversity and equality, and this talent expects to work in organizations and in regions that have protections for its citizens and don't legislate discrimination. As research has shown, and many blogs have broadcast, and many city club lunches have talked about, we have workforce issues, we have workforce concerns. We know that in Northeast Ohio, we have about 20,000 open jobs. We know that the county and other agencies continue to make strategic investments in order to impact these workforce initiatives. This ordinance would serve well to support those initiatives, and you'll hear testimony today that would show that it's critical to those initiatives. We know that this ordinance supports the goals of expanding our workforce, of increasing our competitiveness, and attracting and retaining employees and employers. And in conclusion, I wanted to make a point to touch on my work with the LGBT Chamber of Commerce for the last decade. Our chamber works with LGBT and allied business owners, LGBT professionals, our corporate partners, employee resource groups, diversity and inclusion professionals, and other leaders focusing on creating inclusive and diverse communities. And nearly every week for a decade, the need for workplace protections is underscored. Last week, it was a developer who recounted being told she wanted to keep her job. She shouldn't tell her boss she was a lesbian. It was a month ago when an African-American who thought there were enough reasons for the bank to turn down his application that he wasn't going to check the box that he was LGBTQ. And last year, it was the gay couple from Boston being recruited to Cleveland, describing how it felt to be stripped of their equal rights by moving here. So I thank council for hearing testimony and encourage passage of this ordinance to show that we are open to all and that we are a welcoming community and that we are indeed people who value fairness and equality. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jackson Siegel.
Good afternoon. I just want to say it's an honor to be speaking before you and to see all of these faces and to share some thoughts. So thank you for your time. My name is Jackson Siegel, and I work with the LGBT Community Center of Greater Cleveland. And yes, that is my work life, but I also stand before you as a transgender man. I was born in a female body, and we are all born into this world in a certain way. But I have transitioned now to live my most authentic life, and we could talk about that, but it's been a journey, and this is where I am now. Every day people come into the center, and they're looking for help with finding jobs, securing housing, looking for emergency shelter, or figuring out where their next meal is going to come from. Now, these are just the basis things that happen when it comes to crisis-related events. There's also everything in between. So people come to us because they are looking for LGBT-friendly dentists. They're looking for a primary care physician. They're looking for hair salons, clothing stores. And what this really boils down to is such a simple question. And it's sad that they have to ask, but they're wondering, where can I feel safe? And not all of us have to ask this question when we wake up every day. Our community is constantly seeking resources because far too many of us have felt rejected when trying to access employment, housing, public accommodation. And this is especially demoralizing because in most of Cuyahoga County, it is completely legal to discriminate on the basis of these identity markers. I also want to point out that this level of discrimination is not a singular dimension, that it is intersectional, that LGBT identities are woven in with race, with ethnicity, with religious denominations, that we can't just separate these things as individual because everything that makes us who we are is about humanity and those rights that that calls for. I would feel remiss if I did not mention the higher rates of violence that exist within the LGBT community and the way that that is increased within this country, especially against trans people and especially against trans women of color. And this epidemic has highlighted our own communities with the deaths of people like Felicia Mitchell, Brandy Bledsoe, Betty Skinner, Brittany Sturgis, and Cece Dove. And just this last weekend, we heard of yet another Cleveland area trans person who was killed. I ask that you pass this legislation so that no resident of Cuyahoga County has to experience any level of discrimination for simply waking up and being who they are. Thank you.
Ms. Elizabeth Bonham?
President Brady, Council, thank you. My name is Elizabeth Bonham, and I'm here as a staff attorney with the ACLU of Ohio. We're here today because many Cuyahoga County residents require legal protections to access the very most basic needs. Some marginalized groups find some protection in state and federal law, and the LGBTQ community does not. Ohio has no law providing me as a lesbian recourse if a bakery refuses to sell me a cake for my wedding day. This month, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to create such a law for us. While the U.S. and Ohio fail to act to protect LGBTQ people, the ACLU applauds Cuyahoga County for being brave and sending a message that we are safe and welcome here. It's the right thing for our county to lead the way as a welcoming community. So the ACLU supports the county in passing a non-discrimination law. We ask you to consider, though, 2 reasons that this law is not ready yet to be passed. First, sending a message is not enough. The protections in this ordinance will amount to lip service unless the ordinance also includes a meaningful enforcement mechanism. Under this draft, if I were to try and go and get a pizza for dinner, and the pizza shop kicked me out saying no gays allowed, I would have only 4 months to process what's happened to me and collect myself to file a claim. If I can manage that and if I can make it through lengthy litigation, the best remedy available to me is a cease and desist letter and a small penalty remitted to the county, not to me. The pizza shop got a slap on the wrist. I'm still afraid to go in there, and I've lost time and money trying to vindicate a right that I have on paper. Who in this room could reasonably pursue a claim like that?
If anyone, only the most privileged could. So for this ordinance to provide meaningful protection, we urge the council to pass it, but to include in it a longer statute of limitations, a right to private counsel, and damages and injunctive relief, including attorney fees and costs available. Secondly, including LGBT people as a protected class is also not enough. In crafting a protected class statute, the council has the opportunity to protect people on several bases where they face the gravest discrimination: people who were previously incarcerated and people who use housing choice vouchers. Among these two groups, the LGBT community is seriously overrepresented. So issues of incarceration and poverty are LGBT issues. If we do not address source of income and criminal history discrimination, we cannot truly protect LGBT people. And what protections are available will only extend to the most privileged among us. So for this ordinance to provide comprehensive protection for our community, the ACLU also urges the council to extend protected class status to people with criminal histories and people who use housing vouchers. We believe Cuyahoga County can be a model for safe, just, and inclusive communities if it takes these steps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Meg Ryan Shocky.
My name is Meg Ryan Shocky, and I serve as City Councilwoman for the City of Brooklyn. Currently, Brooklyn is one of 42 communities in Cuyahoga County that does not extend non-discrimination rights based on sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. I was raised to treat everyone equal and with the understanding that discrimination of any kind is wrong. And while that is not always the America we live in, it is the America we should strive to be. It is the county we should become. Because I was born a straight woman, I have certain privileges that have a very real life impacts. I have not had to worry about being refused services, housing accommodations, or a job based on aspects of my character, identity, or life. For example, while apartment hunting and house hunting with my husband, I did not have to worry about if we would be turned away because of who I married. I do not have to think twice about allowing my husband to visit me on lunch at work or potentially fear for my job if my boss does not approve of who I married. My privilege shields me from the reality that thousands of residents around Cuyahoga County, like Jackson, who spoke earlier today, deal with every day, including my hometown of Brooklyn, because it is still a privilege for me not to be discriminated against in employment, housing, and public accommodations. It is a privilege for an aspect of life that should be a right. Discrimination of the LGBTQ community is a human rights issue, as it can disrupt daily behavior others take for granted and leave people feeling unsafe and unwelcome. It is an economic issue, as according to a USA Today article from earlier this year, 34% of LGBT people who experienced discrimination avoided public places such as stores and restaurants, and 47% made specific decisions about where to shop. It is a health issue, as 18% of LGBT people who experienced discrimination avoided doctor offices. And it is a regional issue, in that 10% of LGBT people who experienced discrimination avoided public transportation, which is regionally run here in Cuyahoga County. It is promising to see cities like Umsa Falls pass legislation on a municipal level. However, residents cross city lines to shop, eat, work, and more. It is so important that we as a community welcome a diverse population. While this legislation will not change views or behaviors overnight, it is the first step in welcoming the LGBT community to our county. Thank you.
Ms. Gwen Stembridge.
Thank you so much, council members, for your time today. My name is Gwen Stembridge, and I am the Northeast Ohio Coordinator for Equality Ohio, the statewide LGBTQ education and advocacy organization. I'm also a resident of Cuyahoga County, did not grow up here, but have chosen to live here for the past 7 years, and I'm a lesbian woman. We applaud your leadership in fostering a culture that is welcoming to the LGBTQ community here in Cuyahoga County. And we hope that you'll ultimately vote to make the law match that experience. Your attention to this issue is especially needed now when rights and lives are under threat at the state and national level, and misunderstanding has led to ignorant and harmful words and actions, both close to home and across the country. Today marks an important anniversary in the LGBTQ community. You might not have gotten all of the reminders of that I did on my social media today, but 3 years ago today, marriage equality became the law of the land. 3 years is a pretty long time, and people across the country since then have been able to marry the person that they love, which is a beautiful thing. But that celebration is sometimes soured when someone can celebrate a marriage to the person that they love on the weekend and then be fired from their job, denied access to a loan or a lease, or turned away from a space that is open to others. In an age, and particularly in a year where so many people in our country are being told that in words and actions, that they do not belong, you have the opportunity to send a message to this community that everyone is welcome to earn a living, to enjoy public spaces and services in this county, no matter who they are or whom they love. These ordinances boil down to core values that I think we can all agree are important. Fairness, kindness, dare I say, love. Fully inclusive non-discrimination protections are about dignity, the dignity of the human beings that live among us every day, our neighbors. So we as Equality Ohio are committed to facilitating conversations around the ordinance, answering questions, and supporting you all as a council, just as we have with the 6 other cities that have passed similar ordinances that are in the county. I applaud your efforts here this afternoon and look forward to the day when we can proudly announce that the latest addition to the list of fully welcoming communities is Cuyahoga County. Thank you.
Gwen, can you stick around as well?
I will be here. Thank you so much.
Mr. Edward Gorski.
Good afternoon, President Brady, Council. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak this afternoon. My name is Edward Gorski. I have been proudly out as a gay man since February of 2015, and though I had some initial reservations about coming out, particularly to my family as they are all practicing Catholics, I can honestly say I've encountered nothing but love and support from them, and I truly don't think I've ever been happier. I'm a resident of Olmsted Falls, Ohio, where I'm currently serving my first elected term as Ward 1 City Council. I am the first openly gay member of City Council upon my appointment in March of 2017, and thus became the first openly gay individual to win a municipal election in Olmsted Falls in November of 2017, when I retained my seat. The events leading up to my appointment to City Council are somewhat unique and I think relevant to today's proceedings. On February 4th, 2017, the then Council President, a man named Jay Lynn, posted a sign at his place of business which read, quote, "If you don't know who you identify as, pull down your pants and look." The resulting backlash from the community was a major factor in Mr. Lynn's subsequent resignation from council a little over a week later. The other factor, however, was his disagreements with the city administration over proposed legislation that was being considered at the council meeting of February 14th, 2017. Ordinances 5 and 6, 2017, both introduced at that meeting were non-discrimination ordinances designed to add sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression to the city's protected classes. At this point, this is where I enter the story, Gwen Stembridge and Equality Ohio approached a friend of mine who asked if I would be willing to speak as a member of the community in support of these ordinances. I agreed to do so and spoke in front of council to offer my support. Subsequently, when the issue of replacing Mr. Lynn on council came up, I decided and was compelled by members of council and the community alike to apply for the position to add sort of a new or fresher perspective. And 1 month after speaking in front of council, I was sworn in as Ward 1 council person, and 2 weeks later, I was added as a sponsor to the final non-discrimination ordinance and was able to vote successfully for its passage. During the lead up to passage of both non-discrimination ordinances, we did face something of an uphill battle with our business community. However, I have to give a lot of credit to our former mayor, Anne Marie Donegan, as well as Equality Ohio and their representatives for handling everything and anything that the business community threw at them. In the little over a year since we've passed these ordinances, I have not seen anything in terms of a negative impact. I really truly think that there has been only positive things that have come from passing this ordinance. And now it's up to you as county council. I thank you for your time and your consideration, and I hope that you will consider passing this ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Chris Canary?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Canary, and I am the Associate Director of the Fair Housing Center for Rights and Research, a nonprofit civil rights organization here in Cleveland, whose mission it is to protect and expand fair housing rights, eliminate housing discrimination, and promote integrated communities. We've been engaged in outreach to the County Law Department and Department of Development for the past 2 years about the need for a countywide fair housing ordinance to add protections for marginalized members of our community still facing lawful discrimination. We're also a member of the County Housing Stakeholders, a body convened to help develop the county's housing plan. We've found, both through our research and our direct assistance to victims of housing discrimination, that families who rely upon rental assistance to help pay their rent, LGBTQ members of our community, and those who have previously been incarcerated all face significant discrimination in Cuyahoga County's rental market, unfairly limiting their housing opportunities, maintaining entrenched patterns of residential segregation, and limiting their abilities to be full and equal members of our community. In a 2017 study, we found that 92% of Cuyahoga County housing providers discriminate against families using rental subsidies or rental assistance. This discrimination impacts nearly 1 in 7 African American renter households in Cuyahoga County who receive a rental subsidy. In 2016 study that we conducted, Cuyahoga County LGBT home seekers faced housing discrimination in more than 1 in 3 rental transactions. Lesbian and gay home seekers of color face discrimination more than twice as often as their white counterparts. And finally, those who have previously been incarcerated represent a significant population excluded, often decades on, from full and equal participation in our society. We believe that Cuyahoga County should require housing providers and employers who conduct criminal background screening to use reasonable and non-discriminatory standards. Increasingly common rental screening practices exclude folks with any criminal history whatsoever. If we don't address these barriers to successful reentry, families impacted by prior incarceration remain deprived of the right to move forward, to provide for themselves and their families, and to achieve their full potential. Whereas past government policies and practices have caused the significant racial divide in Cuyahoga County, consistently ranked in the top 5 most racially segregated metropolitan areas in the country, it will take brave and strong new government policies, laws, and practices to achieve a more just and equitable home for all of Cuyahoga County's residents. This legislation could be one such step. We have some concerns with the ordinance, and we echo many of the considerations raised by folks who spoke before me. We look forward to addressing those outside of this meeting with council, and we applaud the county's steps to protect LGBTQ residents of Cuyahoga County and encourage added protections for those who receive rental assistance or have previously been incarcerated. Doing so would be a promising step in line with the 4th goal of the county charter, an improved focus on equity for all our communities and citizens. Thank you.
Mr. President, that was the last speaker. However, if I may, I just wanted to say that due to a misunderstanding by myself, that Councilwoman Simon requested to be an original sponsor to the ordinance of which all the speakers had addressed this afternoon. So I will make this change, and then my apologies to you for that.
Madam Clerk, I understand you to say there are no more people to speak for any other issue as well, correct?
That is
We're
correct,
done.
yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, that took just about an hour. We've got an entirely different subject to discuss, the confirmation hearings for the new Director of Health and Human Services. The council will take a break of 5 minutes or more, or less, and then we'll come back and take up the confirmation hearing.